This is Embrace Your Inner Boldness, a podcast about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. I'm Melissa Henning Frank, coach, guide, and founder of Becoming Bold. I help you strip away the conditioning, reclaim your voice, and rise into the power that's always been yours. Let's get right to it. Hello, welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. Today we're diving into something kind of raw, definitely real, and honestly uncomfortable, but in the best possible way. I felt pulled to talk about this after recently moving my daughter from one largish city to another definitely larger city. And the downtown areas of each of these towns were not the same at all. The first city, I'd describe it as vibrant, beautiful, well-kept, thriving. People seemed happy, businesses were booming, and it looked like money was flowing pretty easily. The second city, not so much. It was run down, it was heavy with poverty, and unhoused people were everywhere. And at one point, we saw a woman sitting on a bench, and it looked like her whole life was packed into a shopping cart. She was sipping from a brown paper bag, and I'll be honest, our first thought was the same that so many people have. If she has money for liquor, why is she on the streets, and why doesn't she have a job? But then empathy snapped me back really quick. We don't know her path. We don't know what she has survived. And truthfully, we should be freaking grateful that we can't fully resonate with whatever it is she's going through and with her pain. And then that helper voice kicks in. How can I make a difference? How can we do better as humans? Here's the thing. So much of what's wrong in this world feels like it's out of our control. But our compassion, our willingness to see people instead of judging them, that is on us, people. And if we don't choose empathy on purpose, this world is only going to get colder. That's why I'm talking about it here today. I refuse to let myself get numb to other people's pain. And I think we're overdue for a collective wake-up call. So today I want to tell you a story about two kids. One was raised in a loving middle-class home, and one was raised in poverty and chaos. We're going to look at what it takes for each of them to thrive, how Maslow's hierarchy of needs plays into their future, and why some of us have a much steeper climb than others. And we'll talk about what we can do, how we can shift from judging to helping and from assuming to understanding. We all have a choice. And today, on this episode, we are choosing empathy. So I want you to picture the two kids. Let's call them Jordan and Riley. Jordan grows up in a home that's calm and it's loving, probably middle class. There's basic stability. There's dinner at 6 p.m., there's family vacations, piano lessons, probably soccer practice, and Jordan's biggest worry is whether they'll make the varsity team or get into their top choice college. And Riley grows up in poverty. Riley's in a home where there's abuse, there's violence, there's drugs, there's neglect. Dinner might mean ramen noodles every day if there's dinner at all. And trust feels like a luxury because the people who were supposed to keep Riley safe didn't. So I want to pause here and let that sit. Here's the important thing to consider here. These two kids already have very different starting lines in life. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's basically the pyramid of what humans need to thrive. And at the bottom, you've got food, water, shelter, safety. If you move up on the pyramid, you get love and belonging, and then self-esteem. And at the very top is self-actualization, aka becoming who you were truly meant to be. So think about Jordan's pyramid. It's stable. They've got food, they've got safety, they've got love, they've got someone cheering them on. Jordan has the mental space to dream big, take risks, and make mistakes because failure isn't life-threatening. Now think about Riley's pyramid. It's shaky from the start. There's not a good foundation. If you don't know where you're going to sleep tonight, or if you'll get hit again, or if there's food in the fridge, you're not thinking about self-actualization. You're thinking about survival. And here's the hard part. This is why I care so deeply about this. Kids raised in poverty are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school. They're twice as likely to experience chronic health problems. Children exposed to abuse and neglect have a 31% higher risk of substance abuse in adulthood. Of course, that's what they're used to. Meanwhile, kids from stable and middle-class homes have better access to health care, better schools, more financial support, basically a smoother path to success. And it's not about intelligence, it's not about work ethic, it's about where they started. It's about the starting line. Let's talk about what happens next with Jordan and Riley. So Jordan graduates high school and heads to college because, of course, it was always an expectation. Jordan has a safety net. If they mess up, they have support to bounce back. Jordan likely gets a decent paying job, buys a house, maybe never really has to think about where their next meal comes from. Now let's talk about what happens next for Riley. Riley has to overcome trauma, lack of access to quality education, maybe mental health struggles, and possibly cycles of poverty or addiction within their family. Their success, in air quotes, isn't just about ambition. It's about breaking generational patterns, healing trauma, and often doing it with no safety net at all. And you know what's interesting? The military often recruits kids like Riley because there's that promise of stability. There's a paycheck, and education sounds like a lifeline. Sometimes it is, but it also means that people with fewer options are carrying a huge part of the weight for our country. Here's where it hits home for me. I grew up closer to Riley's side of life. Poverty, abuse, substance abuse. They weren't just stories that I heard about. That was my life. And statistically speaking, people like me are not supposed to make it out of that. People like my brother and me, we weren't supposed to build thriving careers, launch businesses, or even create podcasts like this one. If I had made different choices, if I had stayed in that environment or around the kind of people that would perpetuate that kind of activity, if I believed I wasn't worth more, if I followed the path of least resistance, my life could have looked a lot different. Addiction, incarceration, struggling paycheck to paycheck with no hope for change. That's where so many of us end up. Not because we're lazy or we don't care, but because the climb out of survival mode is freaking brutal. And I'm grateful that my life path didn't keep me on that trajectory forever. So you might be wondering, why does this matter? It's because when we see someone who's unhoused or someone struggling with addiction or someone barely hanging on at work, we automatically judge. It's natural human nature to do that. We think, why don't they just try harder? But the thing to consider is, what if their starting line was 20 miles behind yours? What if they've been running uphill carrying weights that you can't even see? What if someone on your team resonates with this more than you even know? I want to share some thought-provoking questions for you to consider. How would your life look if you were born into Riley's situation? I know it's kind of hard to imagine that if you have not experienced anything like that, but really try to put yourself in Riley's shoes. Also consider, what safety nets have you relied on that maybe you didn't even notice? And then, how do we create space, not just for empathy, but for action? I'm not here to make anyone feel guilty. I'm here to wake us up to our shared humanity, because the more that we can actually see each other, the more we can help each other. So here's some things that we can do. Volunteer at local shelters. Mentor kids who didn't get a stable start. Hire people who are rebuilding after addiction. And instead of judging, get curious. Catch those judgmental assumptions and think a different thought. Assume good intent. The unhoused adults that you see on the street didn't wish upon a star to get there. The drug addict sleeping on that park bench in the middle of the day didn't blow out his birthday candles and wish to be an addict. Just like you, they were innocent kids looking for love. Their creative brains were like sponges, just soaking in everything from their environment. They were being conditioned and formed by the people around them. And that could have been good or not so good, and sometimes horrible. They were playing, they were singing, drawing, pretending, and something or someone led them down a very difficult path that can be impossible to get away from. We all want the same thing, don't we? We want safety, belonging, and the chance to become who we were meant to be. So let's do what we can to understand and help those around us. Whether it's people in your family or people on the street or in a shelter, why wouldn't we, at a minimum, pause our judgment, pause our assuming, and just see them for the human beings that they are and do what we can to help? Be that person that works in the shelter and looks you in the eyes and welcomes you and treats you like a human being. Again, let's do what we can to understand and help those around us. Thanks for tuning in to Embrace Your Inner Boldness. And if today's episode made you think differently about the people you pass on the street or the coworker who seems to always be struggling, share it. Let's start shifting the conversation, one story, one human being at a time. And until next time, please be kind to your mind. That's it for today's episode of Embrace Your Inner Boldness. If this stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Screenshot this episode, tag me at Becoming Bold LLC, and share it with someone else who's ready to rise. And hey, if you haven't already, take a second to subscribe, rate, and review the show. That's how we spread the boldness and keep this movement growing. Whatever came up for you today, feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't need to wait for perfect timing or permission. You are powerful. You are ready. And remember, the only limit to your boldness is the one you set for yourself. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep becoming you.